Hi, everybody. It is Saturday night. So I need to get this video finished. Wanted to give a brief recap of week 3 and an intro to week 4. Last week, I admit I had a lot of discussions from my part. I think I had 3. It's not that many. But anyway, I just wanted to say I'm really happy with everybody's operationalizing of multidimensional variables. Shout outs, Lindsay, Srijoni, actually, a lot of you. You guys just nailed this one. I thought your questions for measuring my really vague concept were really good. Um, like your responses said, well, you could get at this idea of jaded from lots of different directions, things like measuring weariness or flexibility or frustration, being emotionally drained. Yeah, Oh, and then stratifying. I liked this, Rajoni. Stratifying teachers based on how long that they've been teaching as part of your methodology. Great way to test a demographic variable. Because in fact, that concept comes into play this week because we talk about approximating longitudinal data with a cross-sectional design. And I know that doesn't make any sense right now, at least to most of you, but it will by the end of, well, I don't know, whenever you finish reading through the lesson, right? And I know I deliberately chose vague concepts. Yeah. They won't always be so vague. In fact, I think for this course, we're sort of done with super vague concepts. I still maintain that those are good exercises, right? In both deconstructing what concepts mean, which remember from your Bernard reading last week, right? That's a conceptual definition, right? And then how to go about measuring the conceptual definition, which is your operational definition, right? So I promise all of this will come back from our readings and from the lesson. Will come back in a couple of weeks, a few weeks, when we do data analysis. My advice for now is that to make sure that your indicator questions that you come up with that measure multidimensional variables have good face validity and content validity. Those two are important. So if you didn't write those down to make notes from the Bernard reading, like do it now, right? Make sure you go back, like make sure you know what those are. Like face validity, does your measurement sort of make common sense on the surface, right? On the face of things. And then the content validity, right? Do the indicator questions or the variables all together really get at this thing that it's supposed to, right? Like, in other words, do your scales have the right content to measure this multi-dimensional variable? All right. The second discussion was about hypotheses testing and ethics. I'll see from your assignment, but at least in the discussion, your hypotheses were really good. Remember, simple and straightforward is always the best. Like Annie, Sam, Andrew. Fear of becoming dependent is negatively associated with willingness to participate. Bam, those two things, fear of becoming dependent and willingness to participate. I mean, heads up, like Tara, be a little careful with yours. Tara, like your hypothesis was rural Peruvian farmers are distrustful of outsider influence. Okay, well, that's one thing, right? But remember, a good hypothesis states not just the presence of one thing, distrustful of outsider influence, but like the relationship between two variables. And so think about a hypothesis. A good hypothesis will measure like as one thing goes up, another thing goes down, or as one thing goes up, another thing goes up, that kind of stuff, right? And so if you just say rural farmers are distrustful of outsider influence, like it's like, well, what do you do with that, right? Okay, well, hopefully that helps. The ethics discussion, all those issues with the human terrain teams and Montgomery McFate. Some of you wrote really detailed responses, which was great. I just want to say, like, I had just started teaching at UNT a couple of years before that. And so this was this really interesting debate for our department in the beginning when we were just trying to learn about it, right? Because, like, all of us, like, of course we want our military to be culturally aware of stuff, right? And early on, there were these news reports that units that had a human terrain team member were much more likely to build schools and clinics than units that did not have a human terrain team member. And like, cool, like that's what I want my military to be doing, right? Building schools and clinics overseas, right? That sounded great. But yeah, then all the problems started to come out. And like we had one of our graduate students named Rick, who joined the human terrain team as like a civilian contractor for a month. You could do this. And Rick really became disenchanted, like immediately, with the very limited ways in which the knowledge that he was gathering was then like collected and then used. Because, for example, there were already very preset questions that became fed into sort of like the machine, right? And so it wasn't like Rick was able to do, life histories, and like be able to inform the military from any kind of point of authority, right, about what was really going on the local level, right? And then, of course, and Rick also pointed this out, like the ethics of informed consent. If you're the anthropologist and there are 4 people with you and they all have guns and the group of you show up at someone's door and you ask like, hey, I'm just hoping you have a minute to talk to me and answer some questions. I mean, hopefully you see what's wrong with this, right? Like that person is not really in a position of power in that situation to say no. And then, there's this icky thing like, okay, so someone gets brave enough to talk to you, but then what happens when you leave, right? What happens when you leave to that person who agreed to talk with you, right? You don't know. You never see them again. Did you put them in danger or not? Maybe you did, right? And how would you know? All right. Well, hopefully enough on that. Week 4, this coming week, is when we talk about assessment and program evaluation. And those are like bread and butter kinds of things that applied anthropologists get involved with. I guess I can think of lots of our master students, but like Corey Warnell, she's now at USAID. For her applied thesis, she helped evaluate a reproductive health program in Kenya. The trick with program evaluation, you'll see that it builds on this past week, but the trick with it is that like you're still operationalizing variables like we just did, but you're operationalizing the variable of success. Like success is the one variable that you're really, really trying to operationalize, right? Like, okay, well, given our goals or the goals of whatever program like that you're evaluating, what are we going to call success? What will mean success? And so there's this important part of the Bernard chapter for this week that talks about the value of using experimental design to measure stuff, right? Or to do studies where you use experimental design, where you hypothesize that a dependent variable is affected by an independent variable, right? This is important. You're hypothesizing that a dependent variable is affected by an independent variable. And in this case, in classic program evaluation, success is always the dependent variable, right? And then the program is like, well, I'm sorry, then you say that success is or is not achieved based on whatever your intervention or your program is, right? And again, so success is dependent on your program. If you participate in the program, then you'll have success, right? So that's when success is the dependent variable and your program or intervention is what's called the independent variable, okay? So my advice is that you do that Bernard reading for this week, and then also the readings on program evaluation and assessment, right? It's by Susan Barkman. Hey, Andrew pointed out that there was another locked file in this course. I don't know what's going on, you guys. Like it's not like this is the first year that I've used both of those files, right? So I don't know why suddenly this year they've been locked. And then the other difficulty is like I always go through the lessons beforehand, but for some reason they're not locked for me, like in the teacher role. So I don't know what's going on with Canvas. So I think what I'm going to do is just start going through and replacing all the links for files, because both of the things that were locked were files. And so, yeah, it beats me, but I just wanted to apologize. Like, I don't know. And thanks, Andrew, for letting me know. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm sorry that's happened. I mean, it's just 2 files, but still, and shouldn't have happened. So, yeah, I'll just go through the course more carefully, or I think I'm just going to replace all the PDFs that I have in the course with new links, right? Okay, well, I guess that's it. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. All right, talk to you later. Bye.